So this morning, we're going to talk about changes in the 2018 IECC and 90.1/2016. Just real generally, certainly don't have time to go in depth for all the changes, but we'll just kind of highlight some of the major ones. And then in the course evaluation link that Liz sends out so you can get your ICC CEUs, there's a couple of really thorough, good presentations that I'll include the hyperlinks to on that. So if you want more information on this subject, you will get a couple of hyperlinks with that. And I'm also going to send you a couple of hyperlinks on the ICC's GMVR and code adoption process. That's really important. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to it. So let's get started. Okay, and why will my slide not advance? There we go. Most everyone knows what SPEAR is. SPEAR is an energy efficiency organization. We cover Texas and Oklahoma. We're one of 6, largely funded through DOE. Us and our other, what we call regional energy efficiency organizations, help DOE who realizes that, you know, there's a lot of efficiency is the #1 way to spend your money on saving energy. You know, once you put drywall on a wall, you're not going to go back and insulate it correctly. So we do a lot of work for DOE. And then we also have member companies that provide support for us. And we love our member companies and are happy to show them here real quick. Another thing I wanted to mention, and again, I'll send out a hyperlink on this, on the code change process. What's real important, and is if you want information on it now, you can Google ICC GMVR FAQs, and that'll be the hyperlink I send you. And the real important part of it is this March 29th deadline. So so only governmental members are allowed to vote on the final. Anybody can submit a code change proposal. Anyone. I submitted a couple for the 2021 Energy Code myself. SPEAR, in conjunction with some other groups, signed off on a few more. But anybody, you know, your garbage man can submit a code change proposal for the IBC. Literally anybody can. But to vote on these code change proposals, and obviously this is for the 2018 that's already published, but the months are still relevant for the 2021 process. But to allow yourself to vote in these committee action hearing, public comment hearings, and the final code change proposals, to allow yourself to vote, you have to be registered as a governmental member voting representative by March 29th. So that deadline's coming up. You will be getting some additional emails from SPEAR just to remind you to sign up, to show you how to get signed up as a governmental member voting representative. And then you can add and subtract people from the roster as you see fit. But that March 29th date is a hard date, and we'll be sending more information about that shortly. A couple of other things just to mention while we're talking about news and notes. We'll have another Speakers Bureau in two weeks. We haven't identified a topic yet. And the reason y'all are hearing me this morning, we had somebody had to cancel last minute. So I put this together last minute. Oh, and do want to make sure and credit Todd Taylor and Reed Hart at PNNL and Ian Blanding with MIA for a lot of the slides and work that go into this presentation. They help with that quite a bit. A couple other news and notes. SECO is sponsoring HVAC training for residential HVAC installers. I'll be doing the training. I'll be traveling around the state of Texas to HVAC supply houses at the first thing in the morning, bringing everybody breakfast. But it's just, you know, how to install ducts. I mean, yes, we will cover JS&D and the 100% right way to do it. And then we'll also talk about reality and what gets installed in reality. And if we don't have a complete JS&D, maybe some, and, you know, can we at least get a good mastic seal? Can we at least stretch our ducts right? Can we have gentle curves? And just some of those general overviews. There'll be 2-hour in-person trainings. I'll send out a flyer. We have 4 available dates in Houston, and we'll be scheduling some in Austin and Dallas as well. So you'll get information about that. And then April 8th and 9th is Spears Clean Energy Exchange in Austin. So and we'll send a hyperlink to that agenda as well. You might be interested in coming to our annual conference. Lots of good networking opportunities and lots of good breakout sessions there. So those are kind of the news and notes. So after that, let's go ahead and get started. So in the 2018, so those of you that know, those of you that don't know, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about ASHRAE 90.1 2016 versus the IECC. Had a code official ask me a question the other day about they were doing the cost budget method in 90.1, but you know, his jurisdiction is on the 2015 IECC, and they submitted plans for 90.1 2010, and the design was compliant with 90.1 2010. Well, 90.1 comes out 2 years prior to the IECC, so if you're on the 2015 IECC, 90.1 is one of the compliance paths. So it's completely okay to accept 90.1. You just have to make sure you're accepting the right addition. The correct addition, the correlated addition to the IECC will be 2 years prior. So ASHRAE 90.1 2016, those are some of the building blocks into the 2018 IECC. Now they don't mirror each other by any stretch of the imagination. In my opinion, ASHRAE 90.1 it's a little more difficult and detailed, and there's more mechanical options, and it's just different. But there's some significant things in 90.1 2016 versus the 2018 IECC, and the most important is the climate map, which now aligns with ASHRAE Standard 169 in 90.1 2016. And when we get to that, I'll show you the picture and just briefly kind of highlight how that could be really significant moving forward. So that's one of the major changes in the 90.1 2016 is the new climate map. They changed the format a little bit. There's actually a new performance-based compliance path. I have a couple of slides on that at the end. We'll kind of, again, we're just going to highlight this stuff. I will be sending more detailed information about all of this with the course evaluation. In the 2018 IECC, there were quite a few changes as well. We'll look at a few of the major ones, and we'll talk about those this morning. So let's get started. So on the administrative changes, you know, I have an hour presentation I give over approving third parties, and just some guidance that, in my opinion, as I interpret the code, you know, for you to approve somebody, the code used to say approval by the code official as a result of investigation and tests. Well, so that means to me, you know, you need to have made sure that they have a license. You know, Texas state law says you need to be ICC certified to inspect energy. So if you're doing commercial plan review, you need your IECC commercial plan review certification. There's 4 different certifications. There's the ICC residential inspection plan review combo. So that's 1. So you would just need that 1 for residential inspection and plan review. And then there's a ICC 90.1 combo that covers 90.1 plan review and inspection. And then so conceivably you would need at least those 2 to do everything. Or there's an ICC commercial plan review standalone and an ICC commercial inspection standalone, IECC for both of those. But they've changed the definition of approved slightly. I'm not going to read you my slide. Y'all can read it. And then minor revisions in approved agency. And so just slight tweaks and some administrative changes there. Some of the editorial revisions, just some clarifying language for air barriers. There's a couple of new additions in 90.1 2016 that we'll look at on air barriers as we advance through the presentation this morning. Couple new sections, reorganizes daylight zones, and some clarifying language about rooms containing fuel burning appliances. So we'll kind of highlight some of those as we move forward this morning. There's a new standard for log homes. That was the, for wood having a R1 per inch, that was the most energy efficient home I ever lived in, was a home with 8-inch logs, which, the mass effect, whereas R8 doesn't always equal R8, or does it? Well, mass effect and, well, the delta T, and I'm sure I saw CT Lloyd's on this morning. Over a glass of iced tea, I'm sure he could tell you all about that. He's always fun to visit with, but there's a new standard for residential construction. That'll be IECC 400, basically saying, hey, if you comply with IECC 400, you meet the residential energy code requirements in the 2018 IECC. That's a new standard for log homes. Been a slight change in the U factors, just really, in my opinion, not too significant. You see the change there. 2, 3, and 4 is really all we're concerned about in Texas. And all that's really relative is that climate zone 3 going from 0.35 to 0.32 on the U factor. Most window manufacturers are ahead of the game already. And I typically, and unless you go to Home Depot, which most of your builders aren't getting their windows at Home Depot, you can find some non-code compliant windows at your bulk box stores and your discount stores, but most of your supply, typically your builder supplies, all their fenestration's code compliant. So that shouldn't be too big of an issue. And that's really, especially on the total UA path, total UA path and climate zone 2, a little bit better than code window. And you do a R15 bib in the wall, and you're already way ahead of the game on your res check on your total UA compliance path. So slight change in the U factor, residential. I'm not going to go over this in detail because we had a full hour on this Speakers Bureau before last, I believe. Owens Corning, Neil Friedberg with Owens Corning did a full hour on the new buried duct provisions in the 2018 IECC. Basically, there's a couple of ways to do it. One, at R19 above and below, basically there's, again, I'm not going to beat it up, but there's 1 of 2 ways you can do it. You can either qualify your duct insulation to R25 and or consider your ducts in conditioned space, depending on the details of how you bury your ducts. If you're interested in more information on that, I'd be happy to send you Neil's PDF of his slide presentation, or if you just Google buried ducts, there's a bunch of information on that. Now, one thing for code officials, me personally, I remember when I started as a building official in Granbury, we were on the 97 UBC. Well, I had an architect submit plans compliant with the 2012 IBC, and he calls, I call him and tell him we're on the, he called me, hey, I don't even have a copy of the 97 UBC anymore. Will you accept this? And to me, a newer code is typically a better code. On the IECC side, as far as state compliance, well, ESL has already blessed the 2018 as being as stringent as the 2015. And then Pacific Northwest National Lab and DOE and the folks that analyze the stringency on 90.1 and the IECC have also both said it is as or more stringent. So allowing provisions in the 2018 IECC could be allowed by the authority having jurisdiction. Now, certainly you don't have to allow them. You can mandate, hey, 2015 period, buried ducts isn't in the 2015. I'm not going to allow you to count R25. I'm not going to allow you to count your ducts in conditioned space. But if you have builders wanting to do it, and the 2018 gives you direction on how to qualify that and how to do those calculations. And again, we're just kind of highlighting the changes this morning. We're not going into detail, and especially on this one because we had a full hour 2 weeks ago. But just so you know that that's in there, and you could possibly allow it even if you are on the 2015. Lighting in the 2018 IECC has gone from 75% high efficacy to 90%. Typically not seeing this as an issue whatsoever anymore. Most of the builders are going 100% LED. I know I haven't bought anything but LEDs in a long time. Now, ERI Actually, the requirements for ERI have been relaxed a little bit. Now, Texas, of course, has amended these, so they're still more stringent than Texas amendments. But a couple of interesting caveats in the 2018 ERI, just worth noting, is that if you're taking credit for solar to get you to an ERI score, well, then that 2015 prescriptive envelope is going to be your backstop. Whereas if you're not taking credits for solar or renewables, then you can go back to the 2009 prescriptive envelope for your backstop. You can't get any worse than the 09. So a slight change on that. Some new standards referenced. The ERI approach, I was just at RESNET in New Orleans. Oh, great city. Fantastic. I highly recommend anybody that gets a chance. The RESNET annual conference is really good, especially if you have any raters on the webinar this morning that have never been. Lots of good breakout sessions at RESNET. And RESNET seems to be moving a little bit more towards standards and standards writing. And of course, they're still putting a lot of effort actually in their QA process of the raters now as well, which we're happy to see. But there's a code change proposal that basically referencing RESNET ICC 301 as the basis for the ERI approach. And then ICC 301, if y'all are on RESNET's email list, you'll notice there's some changes. They're moving that from the 301 2014 to the 301 2019. There's some changes in 301. Now this to me is the most significant change in ASHRAE 90.1 2016, and it's the new climate zone map. And basically ASHRAE is saying now, hey, we're going to align the climate zone map with ASHRAE standard 169. And typically in years past, the IECC the climate zone map has always aligned with the ASHRAE 90.1 climate zone map. Well, that's no longer the case in 90.1 2016 and the 2018 IECC. And it's not significant for a lot of the country, as only approximately 10% of the counties were reassigned to a warmer climate zone. We are getting warmer. It doesn't feel like it in Texas today as it's 38 degrees, but we are getting warmer. And what's so significant about that for Texas is a couple of areas here in Texas. Let's see if I can blow it up a little bit. So the most significant in Texas is McAllen, Brownsville down here. Well, that's now climate zone 1. So there's some, your energy code is like Key West, Florida, down here in McAllen, Brownsville, Alton. So if you get some plans, so you want to make sure that, we talked about 90.1 2016 being as stringent. So if you've adopted, could you allow provisions in a newer code? Well, yes, you could. Well, so you're going to have changes in the envelope requirements in South Texas moving to climate zone 1. And wherever even more building goes on is these two counties right here. That's Tarrant and Dallas County. So DFW has moved more significantly into climate zone 2. So that's going to be a huge change. Residential, and granted 90.1 2016 is commercial. But residentially, we all know the difference between climate zone 2 and 3 is super significant. You're going from a 2x4 wall to a 2x6 wall prescriptively. So that's massive changes. So just be aware that this is super significant. 90.1 2016 is now referenced in ASHRAE 169 on the climate zone map, and South Texas has a climate zone 1, and Dallas and Tarrant County have moved to climate zone 2. Some changes in the commercial side. Now we're going to talk a little bit more, continue on the commercial side. Climate zone 4, which most of the attendees this morning are in climate zone 2 and 3, so we won't spend a whole lot of time on it. Basically just the fenestration requirements have gotten a little more stringent is all you see there in the chart. 90.1 2016 goes into a little more detail and is also has updated it throughout all climate zones, whereas the IECC, it's just climate zone 4. So you can see that there. And then in 90.1 2016, this isn't in IECC. There's a couple of new caveats on your air barrier and air leakage. So there's additional options for compliance in the commercial code. Well, now a whole building air leakage test is optional for compliance. And then what's also required is the air barrier design and installation verification is required. And so that's a slight change into 90.1 that's not in the IECC. And this is interesting. It had a metal building with a interior wall, just inside. So you can read this here. Basically, there is provisions in the 2018 IECC to allow the thermal properties of air spaces to be calculated in a thermal wall assembly. And again, that's just, you can read that section there. There's several slides in the additional resources I will send you that go into a little more detail on this. But just so you know that there are some ways that you can calculate the thermal properties of the airspace assembly in a wall assembly now. The HVAC systems in the IECC, they've just basically completely restructured the provisions. There's not a ton of new changes, more so, and you can see on the slide there, they've grouped the HVAC systems provisions together rather than making it system by system. So it's a little clearer to me. And then there's some hotel, motel, guest room controls, which, I travel quite a bit and stay in hotels quite a bit. And inevitably, you check in a hotel in August in Texas and your hotel room is going to be 62 degrees. Has it been staying at 62 degrees for 10 days while it was unoccupied? Well, yes. And so there's some setback requirements when the hotel room's unoccupied, which I think are going, that's a great idea, right? Now this to me, and I've been preaching this to code officials to just allow this administratively for a long time, just because, so the 2015 IECC does not include 2A, 3A, 4A. It's just got climate zones 2B, 3B, 4B to allow an exception for the economizer requirements. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because in Houston, for the 15 minutes a year that you want an economizer, well, you can't install more efficient economy under the 2015 IECC because that climate zone. But in West Texas, where you could use economizer quite a bit with the drier air, well, there was an efficiency improvement exception. So they fixed this in the 2018, and I highly encourage all code officials to allow this. I can't tell you how many HVAC contractors I've talked to, especially in the Houston area, who after they get their CO, they're going to go disconnect the economizer. Well, if the intent of the energy code is to save energy, we had to manufacture that economizer, ship it, install it, just to have it disconnected. I'd much rather have more efficient equipment on the building and as an exception for the economizer. So they fixed that in 2018. I've been encouraging code officials to make an amendment when they adopt the 2015, or even if they don't have an official amendment, just to allow it as the third authority having jurisdiction. Kimberly Llewellyn, an engineer with Mitsubishi who really understands, she talked over my head for about an hour, but convinced me, and I've talked to multiple other engineers, and this just makes sense to allow the more efficient equipment as an exception for the economizers. And again, they fixed it in the 2018. That's the best thing I've seen in the 2018 thus far. A couple other changes in the ASHRAE 90.1 and the IECC. We already talked about the hotel, motel, guest rooms. In 90.1, there's also some chilled water plant metering requirements that aren't in the 2018 IECC, so be aware of that. And again, we're not going into details in any of these. I've got 30 slides to show you this morning, but I have a couple of 100-slide presentations that I'll be sending you that'll go into way more detail on all of this. So some variable flow pumping. Now the variable speed drive is required on some of that stuff, depending on the size. And then in the 2015 IECC, the controls just had to be set points, so that they had to have set points had to be part of the control. They had to be capable of the set points. Well, now at CO inspection, those controls are required to be configured rather than just capable of being configured. A slight change there, which, typically if you're enforcing the commissioning process, in the 15 IECC, the commissioning provider, this is the kind of stuff they catch. So another reason to go ahead and enforce the commissioning requirements in the code. Some changes in 90.1 2016 that weren't in the IECC, some run-out pipe insulation requirements. I'm not a big fan of reduced flow. To me, flows of plumbing fixtures belong in the plumbing code. And they're not in 90.1, but for some reason, just the shower head, there was a reduction in flow in the 2018 IECC. I've heard that the ICC board is going forward. I think that all of that stuff is going to stick in the IPC and stay out of the IECC moving forward. Interior lighting systems, there's been some reductions in allowable watts per square foot. You see the differences here in the 2015 lighting power densities versus the 2018. This is just simply a reflection of the prevalence of LEDs in the market, and the LEDs are getting more efficient as well. If you're using LEDs, you're not going to have any problems meeting these lighting power densities. And there's also, actually, it's not applicable in Texas yet, but some grow room lighting requirements that are some of the other states are dealing with. Interior lighting systems, again, same deal, just slightly more stringent lighting power densities requirements on the additional interior lighting power requirements. The daylight control trade-off in the 2018 IECC, there's some basically trade-offs in regard to the daylight sensors and controls, and allows the lighting power reduction requirements and a trade-off with those. Those aren't in 90.1. Exterior lighting systems, again, the general theme, and you'll see this, I'm sure, again in the 2021, as just, LEDs are pretty much saturated the market now. So you'll see those lighting power densities and those lighting requirements generally become more restrictive over time. Just, it makes sense as those products are readily available. Exterior lighting, no different. This isn't in the 2018 IECC, but ASHRAE has a reduction of power, has gone from 30 to 50% during unoccupied periods after business hours. That was always kind of I understand that you want to, highlight your business when it's dark, but once your business is closed, I think it makes a lot of sense to, reduce your exterior lighting power. You can still see that it's there, and but you're saving quite a bit of energy that way. And then outdoor parking as well. Been a couple of additional options in the options package. We talked about that enhanced envelope performance a little bit. Basically, you're going to take your total UA, your thermal envelope, and achieve 15% below. Or test your building and have reduced air infiltration. So a couple of additional options packages coming in. Some tweaks in the commissioning verbiage and requirements. Again, I have commissioning documents. Any code officials that haven't heard me offer this, some real good commissioning checklists and guidelines for permit submittals. If you're interested in those, shoot me an email, and I can send them to you as Word documents, and you can copy and paste your city logo on them, and you're good to go. It's just basically a checklist, just something for your building file, and something to make sure the architect, engineer, building owner know that commissioning is required. You know, if the requirements aren't known, you're going to have a hard time meeting requirements. So it's just some checklists and some information about the commissioning requirements. I'm happy to send those to you. When you send in your course evaluation for your CEUs, just send Liz a note or send me an email that you're interested in those documents. I'll be happy to send them to you. Renewables. In the 2018 IECC, and we actually just worked on this I worked with Sierra Club, so San Antonio was already adopted the 2018 IECC, but they didn't adopt the Solar Ready and the EV requirements, and we've recently done some amendments to those, and those are going to the building board. Hopefully, will be adopted here pretty soon. There's some new requirements there: minimum roof area, roof load documentation, interconnection pathway. Just your typical, what was in the appendix is now going to be required in the text, or in the normal chapter. So that's a change in the 2018. And you, again, so a lot of energy efficiency advocates. I never was as worried about it as most, because to me, most buildings, if you're doing solar and renewables, most of the time, now certainly not all the time, and that was the worry, is that, you know, a developer would skimp on the shell just to put a bunch of solar on to meet, you know, energy, whether energy cost or ERI or whatever, depending on the compliance path. Typically, I don't think you would see that in the real world. Typically, folks that are employing renewables would also be, you know, putting in a little better HVAC and spending a little more on the envelope. But, you know, that could be a concern where envelope provisions are skimped on in lieu of renewable to meet code. So there's some additional requirements coming into the 18 and 2016, 90.1 2016 there. We already talked about the shower head flow rate. No real point in going back over that. Garage door glazing now. There's a new, in the IECC 2018, there's a new U factor that's been added as a minimum requirement for garage doors with greater than 14% glazing. This is kind of interesting. There's a new performance cost index. Used to be in the appendix. So Appendix G, and I didn't really wade into this too heavily, other than just get the gist of, hey, this is a new compliance path in 90.1 2016. You know, heaven forbid we make it based on a 100 here at the baseline and 0 for net zero, so it would somewhat align with the ERI numbers, but no, that would have been too simple. So ASHRAE decided to make it a 1.0 for the baseline 90.1 2004 and a 0 for net zero. So you see how the different code additions line up as far as compliance pass there. One interesting thing is you know, that PCI target is going to change with each version of the code. So there's going to be required performance cost index that's going to be tied to the code addition. So there's some intricacies in the calculations there that we'll probably have to do either a full webinar on, or certainly spend a good 20-30 minutes really hashing out the details. A little bit more about it. So, you know, it's not specifically in the IECC, but, you know, 90.1 is one of the compliance paths. So it really is. And you know, and I think one of the good things about it, you know, especially in Texas, you know, the cooling dominated climate, the more credit and the more validation and the more, you know, onus that we can put on really good, well-designed, right-sized HVAC systems, the more of that, the better. And that'll be, like I said, that'll be we'll have at least 5 HVAC specific webinars to coincide with the field training I'll be doing on residential HVAC installation. These will be more geared at the designers and the guys actually doing the manual JS&D, but we'll have a bunch more on this coming forward. We just kind of want to highlight it here this morning. So that's it. I have there's a low load home presentation at ACA that I have to be at 10 this morning. So I'm having to finish up a little early this morning. I apologize for that. I will go ahead and answer the questions, any questions that have come in real quick. And these links for these additional resources, again, it's hundreds of slides, videos, tons of additional information. We will be sending that out with the course evaluation. So the one question I have is, when is Texas planning to adopt the 2018 IECC? Texas has punted on the 2018 IECC. The State Energy Conservation Office looked at it, and technically House Bill 1736 said that we couldn't adopt the 2018 IECC residentially. Because House Bill 1736, the builders basically said, hey, we'll agree to the 2015 IECC, but we don't want to be changing this every 3 years. So give us at least a 6-year cycle on the energy code for residential. So that's part of the law that brought the 2015 as the minimum residential requirements. Now, SECO could, and ESL analyzed it, and SECO looked at making the 2018 IECC a requirement for commercial, but they've decided not to, and I think that's good. Me personally, if ICC would just go to 5-year cycles instead of 3, then we could just adopt every 5 years. It'd give people 5 years to learn the new stuff. But what SECO is doing, and I think is going to work pretty well, is I think they're going to look at moving. I mean, they can change, and there's nothing other than on the residential side in statute that would require this, but they won't take up the energy code again until the 2021. So that'll be coming with the 2021. Are they planning on adopting the residential IECC? Oh, sorry, same question. No, they won't adopt the 2018 IECC. So with that, going to there's ACA has published, for those of you that know, ACA has a new load calculation and guidance on low load homes. So some of these, especially the climate zone 3 homes that are, coming in, that are doing the continuous insulation or the R19 walls and are, hitting that 2 air change-ish an hour, because they're required 3 air changes in climate zone 3. A lot of those homes are going to qualify as low load homes. And so there's some tweaks into the calculations that are specific to low load homes. So I'm about to join the ACA conference in downtown San Antonio. That presentation starts at 10 o'clock this morning, so I'm headed there. And again, we'll follow up with links on all that additional information I sent this morning. Thanks for joining us. You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.